Mr. Chairman, you're live.
Okay, we'll go and get started. Let's do a roll call.
Senator Brennan? Senator Furphy?
Here.
Senator Kolb?
Present.
Senator Pappas?
Here.
Chairman Boner?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, the first bill we have is House Bill 44. This is a transportation bill from the interim. So Director Reiner, welcome back to Senate Transportation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. For the record, Luke Reiner, Director of WIDOT. So, Mr. Chairman, you're right. This is one of the bills that we did certainly work in the interim, just as a quick reminder, and then I'll kick it over to Chief Engineer Mark Gillette. And also with me today is Keith Fulton, our Assistant Chief Engineer for Planning. But this House Bill 44 has to do with road and bridge construction. And just as the background is currently for WIDOT, we are required by statute to only use design build as we contract out our contracts, and it goes to the lowest responsible bidder. As we look ahead, really we anticipate jobs coming that we need some extra tools in the toolbox. And so that's what this bill does, is it allows WIDOT to use the same options that currently our state construction department uses in terms of other ways to contract. It doesn't change the requirement for us to compete. It doesn't change the requirement for us to get the best value as we compete these construction projects. But what it does, it gives us extra tools in the toolbox. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll turn it over to Mr. Gillette to walk you through a couple points and through the bill.
You go ahead, Mr. Gillette.
Mr. Chairman, Mark Gillette, Chief Engineer for WIDOT. And as the director was saying, the essence of this bill is to allow WIDOT to use alternate project delivery methods that are already referenced in statutes. And what I would like to do, Mr. Chairman, is go through the handout that you should have, looks like this, and answer any questions, and then hopefully walk you through the bill. So turning to page 1, Mr. Chairman, over the years, the Federal Highway Administration and the associated general contractors and other state DOTs have developed innovative methods to deliver projects. So the issue is under Statute 24.2.108. In other words, the highways. The Transportation Commission is only authorized to award projects to the lowest responsible bidder for horizontal or highway construction. The FHWA, as I mentioned, encourages states to consider use of these alternate contracting methods. And utilizing alternate contract methods for projects with unique design and construction requirements would allow the commission to capitalize on project efficiencies and cost savings. Allowing the Transportation Commission to use other methods would align it with other state entities' alternate delivery methods, as outlined in the existing statute at the bottom of the page there, 16.6.701 and 707. So turning to the next page, depiction there is the current contracting method, which is design, bid, and then build. This project delivery has 3 phases. You design the project completely, and when you get it done designed, you bid it and award it to the lowest responsible bidder, and then that contractor builds the project. And so this particular contracting method is what we've used in the past and are still using today, and it can be fairly lengthy as far as time goes. Turning to the next page are some examples of industry standard alternative contracting methods. The first one there, construction management and general contractor, is one that has two phases. You design the project in consultation with a contractor or a contracting expert. And the reason you do that is to get their ideas, to bounce off your design to see if it's constructible or not, etc. So then the second phase is the construction phase, and there's two ways to do that. You can negotiate a guaranteed maximum price with a general contractor, which could be the contractor that you had helping you design it. And if you cannot negotiate a price that you believe is fair, you can also always open it up to bid, competitive bid. So generally, these are used for large, complex projects. This two-phase is a little faster project delivery type method. Then the next method, design build, generally has one phase. And so your design build is where you would hire a designer and a contractor together. It could be one organization or it could be a team. But so you design the project, and then the other part of the team can start building it before you complete the design. So you could start the dirt work, say, on a construction project, a highway construction project, and then once you get that done and maybe start designing bridges or whatever, the dirt contractor can start work. And so you design and you may build part of it, and then you design some more and build some more of it. And so this particular delivery method is fast, usually. It's one that takes advantage of time if you don't have a lot of time to get a project in place. Again, this type of project delivery is used on large, complicated projects normally, but they don't have to be large. It could be just one where the owner may not be real familiar with that type of design. And so anyway, an example of this that we have coming up is the I-80, I-25 interchange project right here outside Cheyenne, in which you might want to be able to use this type of project delivery. And Mr. Chairman, I see YDOT taking advantage of both of these contract delivery methods if it were available to us. Turning to the next page, a couple more examples. Multi-prime, first one there. That's kind of where you design the project, and then you're kind of the general contractor. In other words, YDOT would hire the dirt contractor. They would hire then a bridge contractor, maybe a paving contractor. And so there's multiple primes. YDOT's not too in favor of that particular one, and I don't see us using it. The next one example there is indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity. In this type of delivery, you would contract with a contractor to provide indefinite quantity of supplies, items, or services for a fixed time, but you may not know what the quantities are at the time you hire the contractor. So contracts are awarded for a general scope of work in a geographic area and limited time period. The best example that I could come up with this would be, for instance, our guardrail that's out there across the state. We know that it gets hit, right, from time to time. It would be good if YDOT could hire a contractor and enter into a contract where, say, they bid lineal feet of guardrail repair for X number of dollars for, say, 1 year. And then as crashes occur and that guardrail gets struck, and that contractor could go out there and repair that guardrail for the price that you agreed to in the contract. And so you don't know how many times it'll get hit, but at any rate, that's kind of the idea behind that one. I think YDOT could use that one. So turning to the next page, Mr. Chairman, which I believe is our last page, it's just our recommendation, allow for alternative contract methods for projects where cost efficiencies can be maximized. Certainly, YDOT will continue to use the design, bid, build, and only look at alternative contract delivery methods where there's a unique design and construction requirements. I suspect that only maybe 1, 2, 3% of our contracts would we use alternative contracting. So a large portion of our contracts into the future would still be the old design, bid, build. So we'd like to amend our statute 24-2108 to allow alternate design and construction delivery methods to align with similar construction contracts used by other public entities in Wyoming. With that, Mr. Chairman, that's the handout we gave you. I'd certainly stand for any questions if there are any, and then perhaps walk you through the bill.
Any questions so far, committee? Senator Furphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me ask on the design bill. When they come up with a design, do they guarantee a cost that they'll meet if they design and then build it? Does that happen? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Furphy, yes, you can negotiate a cost, but there's things always come up. And so the idea behind this one, if you have the designer and the contractor being on one team, change orders hopefully would be a minimum because they're constantly talking to each other and trying to get, the very best design and then go construct it. So I can't say that you would have, a cost up front that you're going to stick to, but I think you would have a pretty good idea.
Senator Pappas.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to further add to what Mark mentioned, design build typically is a fixed fee contract, typically. It's usually bid out. But it goes to one entity, whether that one entity is a single firm that will design it and build it, or it could be like I've been on many teams where we do a joint venture. But it's still under the joint venture. That's one single entity, and we'll agree on a cost. And so there can be, since it hasn't been designed yet, you typically come up with a cost and with basically a scope of work, and so we'll deliver you this. In my case, there were buildings, right? We deliver you this building for this price, but the team has a lot of latitude to change the design to meet the cost. So design build is it's a pretty effective way, especially when you don't have a lot of time.
Mr. Chairman, if I could add that, yes, and that is correct. And there's different ways to do a design bid. And that's what's kind of neat about that particular project delivery. If you only got so much money, you just put that up front and say design build till you run out of money. Or you could say a fixed scope of work, right? And continue on with that way. There's different ways you can procure that, but it is a very efficient way to deliver a project.
Okay, any further questions? Senator Cole.
Thank you, Chairman Boner. Which one of the alternate contracting methods, I don't see it anywhere. Maybe I just missed it. Which one do you prefer? You're just going to say we can do all these if we choose to, if it fits the project?
Mr. Chairman, I would answer that question by saying Yes, we would like to use all of them. I think there is some favorites that we would like to try, but I think it depends on the nature of the project and as to what alternate you use. I can see using the two that I mentioned on that first page, the design build and the contractor management, general contractor. Those are probably the two that I'm looking at to use the most.
Follow up. Who decides the risk benefit to choosing these other alternate methods?
That would, Mr. Chairman, that would be the owner in this case for us, YDOT.
Yeah, just who and WYDOT? I mean, who and WYDOT would make these decisions, and what expertise do they have in, because you haven't had this choice before, apparently, right? So who and WYDOT would come up with those? I mean, what team of people or what individual would be making this decision on this level of a choice that never was able to be made before? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Kolb, you're correct. And we would certainly engage with the AGC of Wyoming. We would look at other DOTs to look at their specs and how they got their alternate delivery methods set up, but within YDOT, largely it would probably fall to Keith Fulton's team, the engineer and planning team that currently designs our projects and bids them out. But certainly I, and then of course the director would have say in there if we so chose.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Mr.
Jared.
Chairman, a quick follow-up. So that what Mr. Gillette says is exactly correct. The other thing to remember is certainly there's commission oversight on what we're doing in that realm. I think the so what is, like Mr. Gillette says, is not anticipate using these often. But as we look at the I-25, I-80 interchange, which we'd really like to do, design, bid, build, it's too big of a job to design it all first and then to bid it and then to build it. And so that's the beauty of specifically this design build that we're talking about.
Okay, Senator Pappas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And also, just because these methods are maybe new to YDOT, they're not new. The construction industry has been using these methods for a long time. I've used them for the last 40 years in my practice. The ability to use one depends on the situation. For the most part, they're going to still do design, bid, build, because projects typically will require that. But when you have projects that, especially ones that have multiple phases, if you have phased projects, you may want to go with CMAR, construction management at risk. You may, and if they've got small projects like the guardrail project, IDIQ contract makes sense to put somebody under contract for a year because of these small little things you got to go out and do all the time instead of having to put it out to bid every time. And so if you can get unit prices on an IDIQ contract, that's perfect. So while they might not be used a lot, each situation will require which contract to use at that point. And certainly the commission, in my mind, would be the folks that would determine which method that the YDOT would take them to the commission and get their approval to do that. And I believe that the information that the commissioners would get and YDOT would get is readily available from the construction industry, from the AG's office, from everybody, because all of this information has been out there and it's been used for years. It's not new.
Any further questions? Senator Kolb.
Thank you, Chairman Boner. It's new to YDOT. That's my whole point here. I'm well familiar with all these different choices you could have for bidding out contracts. I've been involved with them before. My question is who in YDOT carries that expertise to make those recommendations to a to the Transportation Commission, who may not have any expertise in this area, and how we're going to make good choices. I mean, I'm happy to give choices to people because in certain circumstances it's appropriate. But the question really comes down to who in YDOT has the expertise to make the recommendations, because you've currently never had the ability to do this. It's a pretty simple question, and that's what I was getting at. Not the ability of having a choice for a certain kind of way of methodology of bidding a project. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, didn't hear a question there, but any further response from YDOT?
Mr. Chairman, I think just the comment there is that that's the professionals to the left and right of me, and that's their responsibility based on the training that they've had, and we've got to start somewhere.
All right, I guess I have a question. Is this going to save you all money? Or is it a convenience thing for staff? What's the advantage exactly?
Mr. Chairman, I would say all the above. I think it could save us money. A lot of these other alternatives can certainly save time. So, yes,
A time for who?
for the public to get a new project delivered.
Okay, cool. So it shortens the timeline then overall?
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, any further questions? Senator Kolb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What are the change order caps that could be associated with a project like this? What are your, I guess, rules that you have in place currently? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Kolb, we do have a policy on change orders. And right now, the chief engineer can approve a change order up to $1 million. Keith and his counterpart, the assistant chief engineer for operations, can approve a change order up to 500,000, I believe it is now. We just changed it. And then anything over $1 million would go to the director, and he can approve a change order up to $2 million. Correct, or 2.5?
It's 2.5.
2.5. And then if it's a change order larger than that, then it goes to our commission.
Any further questions? All right, thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it. Okay, looks like we have any public comment. We'll move on.
Would you like to go through the bill?
Oh, sure. Yeah, it looks like it's pretty straightforward. Page 4, right?
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, I'll try to quickly go through this. On page 1, of course, the bill provides for the Transportation Commission to use alternate contracting methods. And at the bottom there, we're going to amend our current statute 24-2108. At the bottom, under parent A there, is our standard language that we have currently. Page 2, lines 9 and 10, we inserted except as specified under subsection C of this section, which is the meat of the bill, and we'll get to it. But we had to put that in there in our normal way of doing business that we've discussed, and then the rest of it is existing. Then moving on to page 3, more existing language, but towards the bottom, lines 20 and 21, we had to insert the same sentence except as specified under subsection C of this section, because right above this, it talks about what happens if you have an emergency and how you deliver that project in a hurry. Moving over to page 4, again, more existing language until you get to line 7 and 8. The same sentence is inserted in there. And then you get down to the new part, which is C. And it says, as authorized by Wyoming Statute 166702C, which is the existing statute that we're referencing to. And that statute says this act does not, alternate design and construction delivery methods may be used by a public entity for a public work. And then it goes on to say, and notwithstanding Wyoming Statute 166706, which says this act does not apply in the case of a contract made or awarded by any public entity if a part of the contract price is to be paid with funds from the federal government. So if you have a federal government contract, then none of this applies. You follow the federal requirements. And then it goes on to say the commission may use alternate design and construction delivery methods as defined in Wyoming Statute 166701. And that statute says basically alternate design and construction delivery method means the delivery method described by any qualifications-based procurement of design and construction services, including all procedures, actions, events, contractual relationships, obligations, and forms of agreement for the successful completion of any public work other than by design, bid, and build. Alternate design and construction delivery methods available to a public entity include construction manager, agent, construction manager at risk, and design builder. Okay, and then moving on, subsections A and B of this section do not apply to any road, bridge construction work, any part of the cost of which work is paid from the State Highway Fund, and that is using an alternate design and construction delivery method. So parts A and B that we went through, which is our old way of doing business, of course, have to be exempt if we're going to be allowed to do the alternate delivery method. So that, in a nutshell, Mr. Chairman, is the bill.
Okay, any questions on the bill? Okay, thank you, gentlemen, appreciate it. Any public comment in the room? Looks like we got the contractors.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'm Katie Legursky with the Associated General Contractors of Wyoming, and I'll just be very brief. We are very supportive of being able to add alternative delivery methods to the bidding process for the Wyoming Department of Transportation. And with that, I'd stand for any questions.
Any questions for Ms. Legursky? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any further public comment? In the room, seeing none, any online? Okay. Last chance for public comment. Public comment is closed. Committee, what's your pleasure? Moved by Senator Pappas. Any discussion? Senator Kolb.
I would like to have discussion on stating a cap on the maximum amount of a change order that can be done per project, and having the Highway Commission approve of such a change order.
Okay, go ahead. Is it relates to this bill?
Well, I think $1 million is a maximum amount of a change order that can be had without approval of the Wyoming Highway Commission. And I'm willing to have a debate about that, or what a reasonable number would be. But we've had issues in the past where projects, large change orders have happened, and I certainly don't want to see that happening anymore. So I'd like to hear what other folks here on this committee have to say about that, Mr. Chairman.
And you're referring to an incident, I think it was like a $5 million change order that was approved by a district engineer. Is that correct? Is that correct, Senator Kolb?
Yes, it is, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, no, that's, I'm not sure how this relates to the bill itself.
Chairman.
I think it's, you have to,
And that's the
Explain
question,
that.
would it be here separate, or would it be in a separate rule? It would be a rule and other, in their rulemaking on how the bidding process works. And I don't know if it's germane to this or not.
Right.
That's kind of my question.
all right, so just, I guess, question for the department, do your current practices of, who approves what level of change, or would this apply to these new contracting methods?
Mr. Chairman, yes, our change order is a policy, and it covers all projects.
I think I smell an interim topic coming on, Senator.
Smell something.
Yeah, okay, okay. Okay, Senator Pappas.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, while that, may be something that we'd want to pursue, it's certainly outside the scope of this bill. The scope of the bill is too narrow to include all this bill allows is the alternate contracting methods, and won't get into that. That would have to be a different bill.
All right, so I think it's interesting that it's a policy. A policy right now sounds like it's, I'm assuming in rules goes through the regular rulemaking process, but maybe that's something we do need to put in statute. Now, in theory, we could put statute as it deals with alternative bids, but I think I'd rather take a more holistic look at it, so, yeah.
So I think it's a better way of doing it. I think it's a topic.
Microphone.
Sorry. I think it's a topic that needs to be discussed because of what had happened in the past. And obviously, if it doesn't fit this, then I don't want to belabor this bill and chop up a bill and make it into something it doesn't need to be. I do look forward to, with our good chairman's support, it being interim topic.
Oh, for sure. And when the director and I were just talking about, kind of going over some of the processes that they have, not just for change orders, but for, determining, even prioritizing what projects get done, which ones don't. I know I want to learn about that a little bit, and maybe I'm not the only one. That could certainly, change orders, I think, are an important part of that process. So any further discussion on this bill, though? Okay, seeing none, let's do a roll call vote.
Senator Brennan. Senator Furphy. Senator Kolb.
Aye.
Senator Pappas. Chairman Boner. 5 ayes.
Okay, do I have a volunteer to take this committee bill on the floor?
I'll do it.
Oh, you guys can fight over it?
That happens to it. He's more qualified.
Okay, well, it's,
Yeah.
okay, we'll have Senator Pappas take it. Okay, next up, we have House Bill 239. Welcome, sir, to Senate Transportation. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Before you, I have House Bill 239.
Sorry, could you just introduce yourself for the record?
Oh, I'm Daniel Singh, and I'm the sponsor of this bill. And so right now, there's just a little handout describing what this bill does, and I'll just go ahead and read that for you. So House Bill 239, it's vehicle idling decriminalization. In my opinion, it's a good little bill. It's just a repealer. The problem right now is it's currently illegal for anyone to leave their vehicles running unattended on a public road. A violator faces a $200 fine and a misdemeanor pursuant to statute 31.5.1201. Everyone is affected by the current law, particularly delivery drivers and diesel drivers and anyone who wants to warm up or cool down their vehicle before they enter the vehicle itself. This was put in place in 1955 with Senate File 125, the Uniform Act regulating traffic on highways. And the law was written before Bluetooth technology even existed, and air conditioning was a standard feature in vehicles. And so what is it that we can do? We can pass House Bill 239 and remove this obsolete statute from the books for the sake of Wyoming citizens.
Okay, any questions for the sponsor? Senator Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a few. What is the definition of unattended? How long does that mean? Obviously, a lot of folks are jumping in and out of a vehicle during the wintertime. So if you know what that definition is, and then any consequences for leaving your doors unlocked besides someone steals your car and you don't have your vehicle there when you come back? Why wouldn't you add maybe locking the doors if you leave the vehicle? I just wondered why that wasn't in here. Maybe you could help me out with that. Thank you, Representative.
Go ahead.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Senator Kolb. As far as unattended, the only definition is that there isn't someone with a license sitting in the vehicle itself. So there wasn't necessarily a time frame associated with unattended. And then, can you remind me your second question there?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just why wouldn't we have to some sort of responsibility to lock your vehicle if you're going to leave it running?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Kolb, I'm not sure. The intention in this bill was to specifically take out the idling portion of that, and we did that with the title itself, so locking the vehicle didn't pertain to for the title.
Any further questions, committee? Okay, why, if you said this law goes back to 1955. What is the original intent of the law? Have this requirement, and that's currently in statute, to not leave your vehicle idling? What is the problem they're trying to solve with it, you know?
This was, so in 1955, with the Uniform Act regulating traffic on highways, this was a precursor to the interstate highway system. And so this was getting the groundwork done to be in, to make sure that everything was uniform with federal rules. As of right now, though, there is no federal rule on leaving your vehicle idling.
Okay, so at some point in the 50s, it was against federal rules, and in order to get that federal interstate system through Wyoming, you had to pass this bill and not idle your vehicles. Is that correct?
This laid the groundwork for synchronization with the federal rules.
Okay. Yeah, okay. All right, any further questions? Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any public comment, any department comment here before you get going? No, you good? Okay. Public comment, come on down. Mr. Winnie.
Mr. Chairman, Bill Winnie, there is a engineering logic to this. The life of the cars in Wyoming, ranchers like to make their pickup trucks go a long time. This is good for the engines. It reduces wear and tear. I'm not sure that's what they intended in 1955 or the reverse of it, but today I support the bill, particularly with the remote start capability you're seeing in cars and at -20 in wintertime. Subject to your questions, thank you.
Hopefully that remote start works when it's -20. It's, I guess
Yes, sir.
that's whether you plug in any questions. Okay, thank you. Any further public comment? Okay, anybody online?
Mr. Chairman, we have two people online. If they'd like to testify, if they'd raise their hand.
Okay. Yeah, anybody wants to testify on this bill online, go ahead and raise your hand. Okay, seeing none, public comment is closed. Committee, what's your pleasure? Moved by Senator Brennan. Any discussion?
I think it's a good bill. As far as idling our cars and, in the weather we have, it's not an issue. And I can see where every delivery driver or Amazon driver is actually breaking the law, and it makes no sense to do that. I think it's good. Frankly, myself, I actually had my car stolen. For 3 minutes, I was in my house. Somebody took the car because I left it running. And I thought I hit the lock button. I did not. I went on a joyride for a while. The police caught him, but not until they tore out my transmission for going over a railroad track. So anyhow, lock your car if you leave it idling. But anyhow, I think it's a good bill.
Okay, fair enough, yeah. Not too jaded based off your experience. That's good. Senator Kolb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and no one has stolen Senator Kolb's vehicle. However, I keep my idling all the time because I work outside and the vehicle's idle, but I will tell you, you pay a consequence, you idle a diesel. Any of these new diesel trucks, you don't want to do that. It is not good for them, not good at all. However, I think in a state like Wyoming, basically driver beware. You want to leave your vehicle idle and someone grabs it, I guess, well, that's the price you face. The new vehicles you can't get away from now. The key fob will not let it go. It may be there idling if you jump out, but it's not getting far. So I'm happy to report if you own a 2020 vehicle, that's the reality. But thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any further discussion and or story time? Okay. Roll call on the bill.
Senator Brennan. Senator Furphy,
Aye.
Senator Kolb,
Aye.
Senator Pappas, Chairman Boner. 5 ayes.
Okay, Representative, who do you want to take the bill on the floor? Brandon will do it. Okay, great. Sweet. Thank you very much. Last bill we have is House Bill 154. Representative Bakes, come on down.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Dalton Banks, Representative, House District 26. And today I bring you House Bill 154. And if you've got a lot of Wyoming pride like I do, it makes you cringe a little bit when you see residents of the state driving around with vehicles that have license plates from other states. So one of the things this bill attempts to address is this very issue. In order to stay competitive with the states around us, because where I'm at, it's plates from Montana. We see a lot. People go over the border. I was talking with another member, and they have the same issue on the South Dakota line. So in order to stay competitive, one of the purposes of this bill is to bring money and revenue back in the state that we lose from people who go outside states because they have the ability to register their vehicles permanently in the states surrounding us. Another intention of this bill is to increase efficiency. Some testimony we heard from some members of the county is in order to increase efficiency in their office, so not having to deal with annual registrations every year, allowing some more efficiency into those offices there as well. And also to bring some relief to people in rising costs, in rising prices and costs of things around the entire country. So the intention of that is our farmers who have 6 or 7 older vehicles, allowing them to register them permanently, giving them that option, as well as some elderly people who've had the same vehicle for 30 years, letting them be able to register that permanently. So that brings them some relief and some efficiency into their life as well. So with the good people in the department that oversees transportation, they brought some of the conforming language into some existing statutes, and you see that in pages 1 through 4, I believe, where it's just adding permanent registration into existing statutes of what we already have. So I'll start my explanation on page 5 of the bill. So the qualifications of if a owner can register a vehicle permanently is that it's not a commercial vehicle and that it's in its 20th year of service. My original bill put that with some states around us, they had it at the 11th year, so older than 10 years at its 11th year. When we worked that bill in the committee on the other side, there were some issues with that. So as we do as good committees and as good legislators, we bring compromises. The compromise was to add, instead of having it at its 11th year, add it as its 20th year. So that brings the number of vehicles that qualify down, and that can offset some of those cost things that we were worried about there. So what is it going to cost? On page 6, we see that it's an administrative fee of $87.50. Again, that number can be tweaked. It was just a number that we picked up again from surrounding states there, and an amount equal to 5 times what you currently pay on your registration. So you pay the 5 times, you're paid out, you get the ability to register your vehicle permanently. And if we move on down there, they can't be transferred. So that permanent vehicle is registered to you permanently. If it's sold, the new owner will have to go through the same process. Can't be transferred, has to be removed upon sale of the vehicle. Page 8, original owner acquiring those fees. Again, upon sale or transfer, they can't transfer it to one vehicle or the next. It's the one vehicle that is permanently permanently registered. So with that little overview of the bill there, there's going to be some talk, I know, about cost and what it does. And in conversations with county officials, other legislators who have reached out, we think that, is it going to cost the county some money? Yes. Is it going to save people some money? Yes. We think that it's going to offset enough because the ability, you pay 5 times what you pay, then you get a big increase. And then because a new set of vehicles qualify every year, will continue to turn over of an increase in those costs there that we get to see. And again, this is optional and not everybody's going to take advantage of it, but the option is there again for, our farmers, elderly population, people who have these older vehicles, that it just makes sense to have them permanently registered, to bring, again, money back to the state as well as efficiency and relief to those people amongst rising costs. So with that overview of the bill, I will stand for any questions you might have.
Any questions for the department sponsor, Senator Kolb?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Where's I don't see the fiscal note, Representative Banks. I don't have it. Maybe I didn't get it in my paperwork here.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure where the fiscal note should be. That's not under my control of having that included in the bill, I don't think, but I can get that for you, I think, if I need to, but I don't see it on there on mine either.
Do you know what the fiscal note is? Do you remember?
I don't, it was a projection, Mr. Chairman, by a guess of how many people do take advantage of this program and the vehicles that qualify for the program. It wasn't a set number. It was a projection of what the increase would be over time, and then what the decrease would be on the back end of it. I don't remember specific numbers off the top of my head.
Senator Kolb?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Banks. And then, so we got Niobrara County here, an example. Well, it's a very, Niobrara County is the example. That's a very, very tiny county. I would have been more helpful to me to see like Sweetwater or, Natrona or, Albany or any of the larger counties. So this really doesn't help me a lot. I'm trying to evaluate what the costs are going to be, the impacts to the counties. So that would have been helpful to have it, just, I guess, throwing it out there. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Representative Banks.
Mr. Chairman, I guess I don't know what you're looking at.
Who's it from, Senator Kolb?
I think that was a letter from Niobrara.
It was a letter from Niobrara.
Oh,
Okay.
okay. I
Gotcha.
haven't seen that, so.
All right, Senator Pappas.
Just to make one clear thing on the, if you sell the vehicle after you've had it permanently registered, and the person who owns the vehicle again could then permanently register it again, right? Because it's still over 20 years. You didn't have to start 20 years again, right? You wouldn't have to own it for 20 years, correct?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Pappas, that is correct, yeah. It's, if it's 20 years older and the vehicle is sold, then the new owner does have the option to do it, yep.
Okay, so seeing no more questions, I guess this is not a new problem. I remember this being an issue on transportation when I was first on as a brand new member, and just, back then the discussion was that the problem wasn't the registration, it's the fact that Montana doesn't have a sales tax. And there's actual entities up in Billings, that hide behind a PO box that simply, are used as I don't know what you call it, a stand-up entity exclusively for the purpose of registering, with the idea that you don't pay that sales tax. Are you sure that I understand the problem. Are you sure that this solves it?
Mr. Chairman, thank you, and not entirely. This at this point, this is just one small way we can attack the issue. I don't think it's going to fix it entirely, but I know people in my community who would take advantage of it. Again, that and it's good and bad with that 20-year mark. I know people in my community, they were sort of unhappy with that mark. They would prefer it be newer, but that was the compromise we reached to try and minimize the concerns of offsetting the costs. I don't think it'll fix the problem entirely, but I think it's a step in that direction, and I think it'll get at it at least a little bit.
Okay. Any further questions? Okay, thanks, sir. Appreciate it. Any further public comment? Why not? Do you have any comment? Anybody? No. Okay, yeah, we've got YDOT coming down, then we'll open up to more general public comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Taylor Rossetti, Support Services Administrator at YDOT. I've got with me today Lacey Bruckner from my Compliance and Investigation Group. And as the representative mentioned, we did provide some of the amendment language earlier in the bill, and most of that was conforming. And I think the committee is well aware that we also have House Bill 41 out there, which is the small trailer permanent registration. And I do think I'd like to just take a quick minute to walk you through the bill and just point out a couple areas where if both bills were happen to pass, it's a fairly easy technical correction, but I'll just point you guys to some of those areas just so as we go through the bill. Turning the page there to page 2, this was some language that we added just for clarification, and this does pretty well mirror what we did on the light trailer bill. But I think when you look there on page 9, we reference section 31.2.206 N through Q in both this and that other bill. So again, that's just going to be a technical correction if both were to pass. There's 2 different processes for the types of vehicles that we're talking about. Then moving over onto page 3, we then again just talked about adding in the permanently registered vehicles here. This is just an administrative thing for us, just for the requirements of when we have to do our license plates and how those are issued. So again, this was just technical so we could operate. Then moving on further there on page 3, lines 16 through 20, similar, that just ends up being prescriptive about what we can do to design those plates. One thing that you guys will probably hear about and will be contemplated is, will folks that have like license plate 2, number 1, be able to transfer that to these permanent vehicles? I don't believe that'll work in this system because again, these vehicles are going to be assigned permanently. Those other vehicles, other license plates are actually reissued every 8 years. Now, we're all aware they go back to the folks typically that want them, but in order to make a permanent registration and that other system coexist, I don't think they'll be able to keep those plates. I just think that's a byproduct of this bill. Moving then on through to page 4, again on lines 19, just those subsections may need to be renumbered if we go down that road. Again, this isn't an issue. It's just something I point out so that we don't confuse ourselves. The next one that I'll point out too then is on page 6, that administrative fee on line 3. On the small trailer bill, it's 50. On this, it's 87.50. Again, that's for you guys to wrestle with. Neither one causes me any consternation. It's just something I point out so that we don't confuse ourselves as we go through this. The one thing that I would point out here on page 7, line 17 through page 8, line 10, looking at this, I don't know that I have any real consternation with that being in the bill, but I don't know how that got into the bill. It wasn't in the original draft, and I don't see it in any amendments anywhere. Really what this does, though, is it allows that transfer of ownership for you to yourself. If you happen to sell a 76 Chevy and then buy a 76 Chevy, this would allow your transfer. But that language is very similar there on page 8, lines 11 through 21. So I don't think there's an issue there. It's just curious that ended up in this bill. I don't know how it got there. I do think that if this were to pass again, I just do point out that there'll be some technical corrections that would need to be done between the 2 bills if both bills go. I think they're both very workable as the way you've got them set up. I think as we look at the bills and some of the things that we've contemplated and the representative mentioned, he did contact us. We've worked through some of this. I think, Mr. Chairman, you asked the right question. I believe the reason that a lot of people escape to Montana is probably the sales tax and not the actual registration. I think the counties will have some things to say about the potential revenue loss, Senator Kolb. I did provide an attachment or a handout for you guys just to contemplate what this might look like for select vehicles over time. It does look kind of like this. And really what that is more of a future-looking document rather than, I think, what this is really targeted to. And I do think the scenarios where this does probably make some sense is exactly what the representative mentioned is you've got a slew of old pickup trucks that are sitting on your ranch and you license those things every single year. We took an example of a 76 half-ton GMC four-wheel drive with a $3,800 sticker price brand new. That would cost a person about $67.10 a year to register. Underneath this program, it would cost somebody about $423 and they'd never have to register it again. So you've held on to those vehicles for 40 years. After about 6 years, you're done paying registration for them if you go down this path. So I think that's probably a more common example of where this might apply. But I did want to apply or show you guys what it would look like for some other newer vehicles and just show kind of what those costs might look like for folks. With that, we'd certainly stand for any questions you may have, Mr. Chair.
Any questions for Wyatt? Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Go ahead.
One last thing, Mr. Chairman. The only other thing that I do think we'll need to make sure that the public is aware of is even with these permanent registrations, if these vehicles are to be driven on the road, insurance needs to be maintained. And in talking with our friends in the insurance industry, there is a minor concern that some folks may lose track of that. And without having an annual contact for the registration, it will be very hard to track some of that. But I think we can work through that.
Okay, further questions? Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Any public comment? Well, we have about 2 folks online. Feel free to raise your hand. We'll get you here in a little bit. Mr. Winnie.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Bill Winnie, Sublette County. I support the bill. I have a 1992 GMC Suburban four-wheel drive, half-ton, and bought new. Keeping it running. I did most of the work myself, helped me get 3 boys through UW. And so I think this is a great idea. I would note that I pay license fees each year, $138.66. When they get out far enough, they base those fees on factory costs, and it's 15% of factory costs when you hit the plateau. So that's I would end up paying 5 times that. But anyway, I believe this is a good idea. I'm going to keep that thing running as long as I can. Subject to your questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Winnie. Any questions?
I should also mention during my active duty, it made it all the way to Hong Kong and back.
Imagine I was on a ship, right? Not 20 miles there.
Well, I carried it over on my ship, the USS Holland, as we made a port call, and we brought a bunch of cars back to the States. Subject to your questions, thank you.
All right. I have some questions, probably not for right now, but yeah. Okay, cool. All right, any questions? Thank you, sir. Okay, any further public comment in the room? County commissioners.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Jeremiah Riemann here on behalf of the Wyoming County Commissioners Association. I'm joined online by Niobrara County Commissioner Elaine Griffith, who will be able to provide some additional context from her home community. Mr. Chairman, we certainly appreciate the concept of trying to drive efficiencies, and from that perspective, the commissioners have been supportive of that concept here. As we dug into this a little bit more, we've come to a more cautious approach about this particular legislation and a little bit of concern about what the implications could be, how many vehicles would qualify for this. So as a result of the committee work on the House side, I began to have my staff make outreach to the counties to better understand what that looked like. And I'll just share a little bit of information that I gained from that. Won't suggest that I'm done being able to provide you anything overly specific, but what we found is that in the state of Wyoming, 28% of all vehicles that are currently registered are 20 years or older. That assumes again that they're registered. I also asked our staff to look at how many are 25 years or older. Statewide, that figure looks at 18%. If you look at the 20-year range, on the low end is Teton County with 20% of their vehicles over 20 years of age. Niobrara County is on the top end of that with 42% of all of their vehicles at 20 years or older. In the 25-year range, 11% in Sweetwater and Teton, up to 27% in Niobrara County. Those counties with 20 plus year vehicles, with over 30% of them being in that category, include Hot Springs, Goshen, Campbell, Platte, Weston, Johnson, and Washakie. And we've not completed our complete analysis on this. We still have a few counties to receive additional information. Just going across the panel here, I don't have Laramie County's information. I assume that there are a lot more newer vehicles here perhaps, but I would suspect it's also within these ranges. Albany County is 29% of all vehicles are 20 years or older, 17% for 25 years or older. Sweetwater County, 21% over 20 years, 11% over 25, and 28% over 20 year in converse, with 17% being over that. We've also begun to collect some financial data to understand what that looks like. Obviously, there is the bump that will happen here. Assuming that anybody wanted to take advantage of this, they're going to pay 5 years worth of registration fees. So you'll see that bump every time, but we'll also see a drop in some amount. We just don't know that, and I haven't been able to fully go about that. But I just pulled Sweetwater County's figures in terms of the financial. The 20 plus year vehicles account for about $900,000 in county revenue every year. And the state portion of that is an additional $430,000. Again, we'll have to see what would happen with those bumps. Again, we appreciate the efficiency here. We want to make sure that we're making an informed decision. Have heard concerns expressed about the insurance component. All of us have to indicate who our insurance provider is every year. That's not a component here, so we'll have to perhaps consider that. It's also difficult for us to, again, determine that positive or negative impact. This may be a good thing. I just don't know without digging into it further than I've been able to at this point. I've got a little bit more data. Hopefully I can do that for you if this moves forward. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'd stand for questions, but I think you'll get a lot more out of the commissioner.
Okay, any questions? Okay, thank you. Appreciate the attempt or partial data there. It's better than no data at all. Appreciate it. So looks like we have Commissioner Griffith online. Let's go ahead and let her in.
I admitted Ms. Griffith needs to
Okay.
turn on her mic and
Okay.
video.
Yeah, let's go ahead and turn on your mic and video, Commissioner, and proceed with your testimony.
Hello, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate the opportunity to appear before you. I want you to know that I stand in opposition of this bill, and my fellow commissioners in Niobrara County do. I think I didn't mention Elaine Griffith, Niobrara County Commissioner. Our concern with this bill is that there will be a gradual chipping away of the revenues that come from the vehicle registrations. There would be a fiscal increase in the collected fees the first year, but thereafter, there would be no county or state fees collected on those vehicles. And it is difficult to project the fiscal impact that this would have on our county or any of the smaller counties, and actually the larger counties too. We don't have the number of newer vehicles that are registered. Our local taxing districts are challenged each year with balancing their budgets in a time when wages, insurance, utilities, supplies, et cetera, continue to rise. We're also concerned about the loss to the state highway funds. We understand that the weather that we've had this winter has created an overwhelming work burden on the state highway department and their employees. We depend on safe highways in Niobrara County for the people that live here and the thousands and thousands and thousands of people that go through here. People don't realize the traffic that goes through Niobrara County. You've been through the terms of the bill, so I'm not going to reiterate that. My husband has a 1992 Ford pickup, and the registration for that this last year was $108.74. The county fees were $58.74, and the state fee was $50. In Niobrara County, and you committee members have the handout for those in the audience, we had 5,420 vehicles registered in Niobrara County. 5,128 were non-commercial, and of those vehicles, 2,132 were in the 20th year of service or older. The county fees collected were $146,000 roughly. State fees were $99,000. And I think that it's important to point out that the county fees do not go to the county entirely. They are, by statute, the county treasurers are directed to distribute those in the same proportions that they distribute property taxes. So for the county fees that Niobrara collected on those 2,132 vehicles, 60.5% of that money went to the school district. And there's some, I realized, for Niobrara County General Fund, it was 12 mills. It was roughly 24,600. But of those 12 mills, we also fund the library and the fairgrounds. I know some of these are very minute amounts. I'm looking at the Senior Citizen Service District. They levy 1 mill, and last year it would have amounted to $2,056. That can be a big thing to a senior center that is operating on a shoestring. Now, I have to say that it's not probable that all the owners of those vehicles would choose to seek permanent registration. Many are presumably older people who are on a fixed income, or a younger person who may not have the funds to pay 5 times the registration fee plus the administration fee. And I would point out that that administration fee goes entirely to the state. It does not come to the county. I had put as a further note the matter of the proof of insurance. This would be a big concern. Once a vehicle is permanently registered, there would be no means of verifying insurance coverage, leaving the potential for uninsured motorists on our streets, county roads, and highways. So I again would say that I stand in opposition to this House Bill 154. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members, and I would stand for any questions.
Any questions for Commissioner Griffith? Hey, thank you, ma'am. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, we have an additional person, Mark Cohen, online.
Okay, let's go ahead and let him in. Okay, welcome, Mr. Cohen. Please proceed with your testimony.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Mark Cowan, County Treasurer for Sweetwater County. Just wanted to provide some data from Sweetwater County. Neither for or against this bill. I think it could do good things and possibly bad things. In Sweetwater County, we ran the numbers of just the passenger vehicles and trucks that would be eligible for this. So no commercial vehicle would be eligible. Currently, right now, we have about 45,000 vehicles that are registered. That total amount is a little over $10 million. At 20 years, that drops to 9,400 vehicles, which is a little over 1.2 million. And so at that 20-year period, those people would be eligible to purchase that permanent plate. At 25 years, after that 5-year initial payment runs out, that count drops down to 5,000 vehicles, so almost 40%. And then in the 30th year, it actually drops down to almost 3,000 vehicles and $262,000 in revenue. So you can see that there's a bleed off of about a little over 10% every year of vehicles that fall off the rolls and the registration rolls. So essentially, if you had 10% of the people at the 20th year taking that permanent plate, the vehicle fall off would catch up to the vehicles that are paying. So it essentially the program could be self-fulfilling, and there might not be any vehicle or any registration loss. We just don't know what that is, but that's just the numbers, the way we look at them. I just wanted to share those. So thank you. And if there's questions, I'll stand.
Any questions, for Mr. Cohen? Yeah, thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. Back to in-person comment. Mr. Moline.
Brett Moline, Wyoming Farm Bureau Federation, sitting in support of this bill. In some ways, I feel like this was kind of designed for a lot of my members with the older vehicles. In a conversation with one of my members just over the weekend, I asked him if he would take advantage of this, and he said no. He's not sure this vehicle would last 5 years to be able to take advantage of it. As far as the insurance, when I license my vehicle, I just have to sign something that I have insurance, and then it can be checked. But you used to have to show proof of insurance. You don't have to do that anymore. And I guess I don't have that concern that a lot of uninsured vehicles will be on the road. And I don't share that concern. I don't think that problem will be any worse than what it is currently. And we have to remember that, every year we'll have another set of vehicles that will be eligible. But for those vehicles to do this, they'll have to pay 5 times that fee plus I think the way the bill is $87.50. So there's counties will get, if people do that, they're going to get that bump every year. And I have no idea what percentage of those vehicles won't last the 5 years for people to take advantage of this. There will be a substantial amount that will do it. I honestly don't think it's going to be 50% to be able to come up with the 5 years at once. Looking at my brother that has about 7 or 8 1976, 1975 Ford pickups. That's his favorite. He likes that motor, but he's not going to do all of them at once. So we're not going to see the big bump. He might do some of them later. So I know that I don't think it's going to be the drain on the county's economy. If I just don't think it's going to be 50% of them. With that, Mr. Chairman, sitting in support of this bill, I would sit for any questions you may have.
Any questions for the Farm Bureau? Okay, thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Mr. Odekope. Welcome to Senate Transportation. Please proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Byron Odekoven, the Executive Director of the Wyoming Association of Sheriffs and Chiefs of Police, neither rising in favor or against the bill, but with a few questions and concerns that I hope you address if you choose to move the bill forward. And let's specifically within the bill. So one, the first one that comes to mind is the size of the license plate. I believe this will be a reduced size plate, much smaller, more akin to the small trailer plate that will be attached to or contemplated for vehicles. And I might add, while I'm the executive director for the association, I'm also a rancher north of Gillette. And I was thinking about this bill. I only have one vehicle in the entire fleet of 11 vehicles at the ranch that's not 20 years old or older. So have a personal reference in here as well. In terms of the size of the vehicle license plate, of course, that's a standard issue in terms of NHTSA, in terms of cross-country travel, if you will, that vehicle recognition that you're encountering a properly licensed vehicle may come into question a little bit when until officers become fully accustomed to seeing Wyoming having itty-bitty plates on vehicles traveling. I'm reminded in my personal operation that the primary vehicle that I used to haul livestock to the sale ring in South Dakota is a full-size pickup that I'd be showing up with a small plate on. I'm sure someone would wonder whether or not I was legal in that aspect or
Do
not.
you have a reference, like a page or line number, or the concern is?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do. Unless you. Mr. Chairman, unless I misread, if that was stricken from the, in the rewrite, if that was out, I'm looking at the engrossed copy versus the original, so it may have been removed. I was under the impression that it was oh yes, page 3, line 14 starts with the size that it would be 3 inches by 6 inches. So it's the small plate, it's the motorcycle size. It goes on to say that license plates for permanent registered vehicles bear no date, shall bear the inscription of permanent, etc. So at first blush reading that, it would appear that these permanent plates will fall under the category of 3 inches wide by 6 inches long, as found on page 3.
No, well, I don't read that way, Byron. To me, the plates for utility trailers, motorcycles, and multi-purpose vehicles shall not be less 3 inches. That's the end of that sentence. Antique plates, which we know aren't 3 inches, continues on. And then the permanent plate here will be after that. So I don't see it as a small plate.
Mr. Chairman, as I said, raise it as a concern, need for clarity to make sure that it doesn't fall under that bracket would be my hope. Is going forward that we make sure that that is indeed the case. Second is insurance. One of the comments was the issue of insurance, and currently, when you register your vehicle every year, the clerk is by statute, or treasurer, excuse me, required to verify your insurance. That's done a couple of different manners. One, you sign for it, and two, it's also required to be computerized. So the clerk is also at the same time checking to see that you are indeed, if your insurance company is registered with the state and the county, providing that online instant verification that your vehicles have insurance. Someone said, well, in some areas, they aren't exactly fond of being the insurance police, if you will, for lack of a better way of asking that, and saying that's, it's more of a law enforcement question. What I would hope we would avoid or ask them to somehow provide some annual insurance is so that it's not an expectation that law enforcement would annually stop everyone to see if they have insurance, because insurance is required as a required element. Much as you do, for example, we used to have vehicle inspection stations, and you used to have your vehicle inspected annually. Your tires, your turn signals, your windshield wipers, your windshield cracks, etc. Did away with that and said it fell to law enforcement to provide those inspections, if you will. Thus, we write fix-it tickets when we see those violations happening on the street. So I would hope it would not increase the burden to check and verify insurance, and we would somehow maintain some ability for the treasurers to ascertain that those permanent registered vehicles are continuing their insurance. In terms of the motorhome, I think we addressed that in terms of the out-of-state registrations and their ability to do that with the out-of-state registrations. I don't anticipate that they would be trying to do a permanent plate in Wyoming in lieu of their ability to circumvent the process out of state to acquire that permanent registration. And much like was described earlier in terms of the low and reserved plates, You wouldn't be able to, if you transferred your permanent plate from one vehicle, you can't transfer it to another vehicle. So I know many farmer ranchers very proud of their heritage grandfather's plate number, if you will. So I'm not sure they would be taking advantage of the permanent plate and give up that low number plate that they've had for several years. So, Mr. Chairman, several issues and concerns. Thank you for the clarity, and just want to make sure the biggest one, of course, the biggest two is size of the plate, display, and insurance. Mr. Chairman.
Any questions for the sheriffs and chiefs, please? Okay, thank you, sir. Any further public comment? Okay, seeing none, public comment is closed. Committee, what's your pleasure? Sorry,
Mr. Chairman, I'll move the bill just to discuss it. Frankly, I'm not so enthralled about it. I would vote for it to get out and have discussion on the floor. I really have a lot of questions about it. I'm concerned about what it's going to do ultimately. I still don't know the fiscal note on it, and what it's going to do to the counties, especially the counties that have a lot of these older vehicles in it. It might not hurt the bigger counties, but I don't know what's going to do our smaller counties. I have the same issues that Mr. Odekoven had regarding insurance. I don't know how we keep track on that. Frankly, I had the same issue with our Pioneer plates. I mean, we issue Pioneer plates and we never see them again, right? We got some 5,000 Pioneer plates out there and we don't even know. We tried to deal with that earlier, but that didn't go through. But and then I also have the issue on the transfer of ownership. Again, that could probably be fixed, but I think there's some issues with that in this bill as well. So I don't know, not really too enthused about it as a concept, but I'm willing to let people discuss it on the floor if they want to.
Senator Kolb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I got a few things. No fiscal note, pretty disconcerting to not know really, because this is complex. Granted, it's anything over 25 years old is where it really kicks in if there's going to be a negative impact. The insurance requirement is a problem. I can imagine, maybe not so much for my county, but other counties, people do forget. They do forget. I forget sometimes. So I think that's an issue. Then it really hurts smaller counties. I mean, the bigger counties is probably, it's negative, right? It's negative to a lot of people, but it really does hurt smaller counties. And most importantly, above all other things I've talked about, is this. We do have a problem here in the state, is my opinion, about how we depreciate vehicles over time. I'm afraid if we start going down this road, making all these special little, a statutory change here and there, we're going to make it very, very hard to deal with this. And I certainly would like to have an interim topic to deal with depreciation of vehicles, because I do think it's unfair. And this all commingles into that question of just, what are we doing here? Is it really fair? Do we want to have some program that lets you go for 5 years if it's 20 years old and pay up front, and then I guess you hope the vehicle lasts for 5 years. Then I guess you hope it lasts longer than that after the 5 years is up. It's where you come out ahead on it. So I'm concerned. I like the concept of the bill, that what we're trying to do, because it is unfair. I'm just concerned that I've seen it happen before. We within good intentions, we make a statutory change, and that statutory change ends up being something you deeply regret later on, because now we have to deal with many more changes in a simple concept of, say, how we depreciate vehicles over time currently in the state. So I like the concept, but I can't support it right now. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Senator Furphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got the same issues. We don't understand the fiscal impact on our counties. And I think it could be significant. We don't need to cut income to our counties at this point and to our cities, et cetera. But so for that reason and the insurance issue can be a big issue to me. So I'll be a no vote on this at this point.
Okay, any further discussion? Senator Brennan.
I'll just chime in since everybody else has. I see some concerns on this, but I'm definitely willing to vote yes to get it onto the floor and have some debate there on the floor. I think that's fair, so.
Okay, I guess Representative Banks, you want to come up? I got a question about the insurance part, but you mentioned other states have a similar provision in their statutes. How do they deal with the insurance concern?
I think it's, Mr. Chairman, a card similar to what we do now is when you send your registration. At least when my county sends my registration, there's a line that says insurance, saying you write your insurance, sign it, send it in. From my understanding, that's something similar. They mail out a card that says, have your insurance, write your insurance provider, sign it, send it in. And so I think the insurance part, that was something that after I drafted the bill, the concerns were arised. I think it's something we can fix. Definitely willing to sit down with anybody and make that adjustment, whether it's a notification, whether it's you have to send in a copy of your insurance card to the county. I think that issue is fixable, and I'm willing to work on that with this committee, if that's your pleasure.
Okay. Senator Pappas.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that's just another duty that we're placing on the counties to send out a card now, and they're not getting any money for it now, right? We're not, if we're saying that we're going to not collect fees from them, yet we're going to send out cards for them to have to initially send out, and then when they get back in, process it like they do now and look up to see if you have insurance. I think that's even, it's very problematic. And again, I really have concerns with this bill. While I may be a vote yes now, I probably be a no upstairs. Unless something changes and you get somebody to run some fairly decent amendments and we get some clarification on that fiscal note. Thank you.
Any further discussion, committee? Oh, Senator Cole? Oh, no. Okay, all right, well, let's go and do a roll call.
Senator Brennan. Senator Furphy.
No.
Senator Kolb.
No.
Senator Pappas. Chairman Boner. 2 ayes, 3 noes.
Okay, thank you, everybody. We'll have 4 bills on Wednesday. I got a few more assigned, so make sure you bring your work ethic with you on Wednesday. So, all right, meeting adjourned.